All right, looks like we have a good amount of people here. Thank you all for joining. Welcome to the Planning for Success with CodeHS Pro webinar. We're excited to have you. Thank you for joining. So we will get started.
Hi, everybody. So Sarah and I are going to be your hosts today. My name is Lucas. I'm a customer success manager from California. Sarah is a customer success manager for CodeHS based in New York. We also have two additional team members here today acting as webinar support. Gary is a customer experience specialist from California, and Mark, a customer success manager from Texas. So they're going to be answering your questions, making sure we stay on track, making sure we stay on time, all that good stuff. And then some crazy stuff about kind of the four of us. We have all four moved this year. Three of them, not me, moved during the pandemic, which sounds terrible. And then we actually were all middle school teachers as well. So we make up a pretty diverse team, but I think we're a great team, and we're glad to have you here for this webinar today.
So some of today's webinar objectives, and I've seen some of you are already writing about this in the chat, so happy to hear that. By the end of today, you will be able to create a CodeHS course and section, configure your course settings so you're ready for the first day of school, track your student progress and grade assignments easily, use our resources for day-to-day teaching, and know where to go for support when you need it. So we'll get started and bring you right to the site. Okay, sorry about that. So we will have next week another webinar on choosing your courses and how to best choose the courses to fit your students and your school. For the purpose of this webinar, we'll assume you already know what you're teaching, and we can show you how to create those courses. So if you've used CodeHS before, we have a little bit of a new flow for doing so. So the first step will be to go to your courses on the left-hand side of your screen. And here you'll see I can create a new course. I will name this demo. And the reason why you'd want to create a new course is you can use that one course with all the same settings for multiple sections across your classes, which is really helpful. So you'll choose a starting point. You can either start from scratch, which is pretty awesome. We'll have some new tools for you to be able to do that and add in your own resources as well as CodeHS resources. Or you can choose from one of our templates, which is probably what most of you will be doing. Here you'll see all of the courses that are available in our course catalog. You can search for whichever course you want to teach. So if I want to teach an AP course, I can search for that, click which one I want to use, and then my course will be created and will land on this courses page. Once it's on this page, I now have the opportunity to add sections to that course. So I can click here and add a new section. Either you can import directly from Google Classroom, which we also have some new capabilities for Pro, such as grade passback and some Google Classroom assignments. Or you can just create a section which your students will join using your class code. So now we will go to talk a little bit about the assignments that you'll have access to.
Yeah, and are there any questions about the course and section flow process, Mark or Gary, that we should address currently?
Nope, we're all good to this point.
Great. Okay, so Sarah was showcasing on the left-hand side, we were looking at courses and then at sections. So you can see here, I have gone ahead and created a section called First Period JavaScript. These are my bright and early students ready to go, 8:05. And we can see from the assignments tab here that we have the curriculum laid out before us. So we'll see each module, programming with Carol, Carol challenges, JavaScript and graphics, so on. When we click on a module, we see each lesson. And when we click on a lesson, we see each activity. So this is a pretty standard activity flow here. Video, quiz, example, and somewhere between 1 and 3 exercises is probably what you can expect. Let's look at how to customize our curriculum a little bit. My first period class is actually an advanced class. We did programming with Carol as summer work. So I actually want to start with these Carol challenges. So let's go ahead, and on the right-hand side, we see an edit button. We'll go ahead and click edit, and we will just drag Carol challenges above programming with Carol. When I click done, that's now going to be our first unit. That's going to be the first thing that students see. So on day 1, they will see challenge problem 2.1.1 fetch. You'll notice on the right-hand side here, you can see the problem guides. You can preview this as a student, go to the gradebook and grade that material, and so on. So because, as I said, we did programming with Carol as summer work, I actually want to remove this from the curriculum altogether. We'll touch on later how I could just unassign it or how I could lock it with access controls. But this is something that we've already done, so I am just going to remove it altogether. On the right-hand side, we see these ellipses buttons. When we click that, you can see that we can preview or copy the link or delete, add new lessons, etc. I actually want to delete this, right? I said it was already completed in another course. So when I click on that, it says, are you really sure you want to delete this module? This is a warning because you are in fact deleting this module. So let's go ahead and yeah, I want to delete that module. So you can see now that we go straight from Carol challenges to JavaScript and graphics. That module, programming with Carol, has been removed from our curriculum flow. Now, there's a module that I want to add. It's in a different CodeHS course. So I could use this add button here, but I'm actually just going to scroll down to the bottom of our page. And under search for content, you'll see the first thing that we recommend adding as far as content is supplemental material. You can see these are midterms or extra practice puzzles, additional projects, so on. This could be material that we've used previously in a year-long course, material that doesn't quite fit in a year-long course, or just additional projects, stuff, passion projects here at CodeHS that we've worked on. But the module I'm looking to add is actually not a supplemental module for this course. So I'm going to go to the CodeHS course catalog. This will take me back to the CodeHS course catalog where I picked my course originally. The module I want to add is in our cybersecurity course. And then you can see that I can add the entire course by using assign. I can enroll myself in this course as a student by using enroll. I can view the syllabus, obviously, by clicking view syllabus. But I want to just view the units. I'm adding just one unit from our cybersecurity course to my first period JavaScript course. So I'm going to add digital citizenship and cyber hygiene. This is basically how to be a good person on the internet, how to protect yourself, the implications of cyberbullying, how to find good resources online, things like that. I think this is a really powerful module, and I want to add it to my first period course. So I'm going to go ahead and click assign, and then it asks me which of my courses I want to add that to. And I'm going to say I want to add that to first period JavaScript, and there's my demo section. I can set due dates and things like that directly from this page, but for the time being, I'm just going to assign that to this course. I can continue to look through the CodeHS course catalog to find additional courses, or I can go back to this course to take a look at where that module has been added. So we can see here down at the bottom of my course now, even after the final exam, it's added that module that I just added. It added digital citizenship and cyber hygiene to my first period JavaScript course. And I lied earlier when I said that I wanted to start the course with Carol challenges. I actually want to start the course with digital citizenship and cyber hygiene. So using the edit button right here, we're going to move that course to the very top. These modules are really helpful for you and I to see that it's unit 2 in the intro to cyber course, That's not material that a student will see. A student will see that this is module 1 in your first period JavaScript course. So, you know, this is all great, and we've created the exact curriculum that I'm looking for. But obviously there's going to be some advanced students, some students that move a little bit slower. So maybe I don't want to have a ton of curriculum for those advanced students. I just want there to be additional practice for students. They can use this practice tab right here. That's available to all teachers, all students, all users. At the top of any page, there's practice. We have practice problems in 5 different languages, and students can just go to the practice page from any other CodeHS page to the practice page, and there will be additional material for them to work on when they are complete with the curriculum in your course, or what you would like the students to have accomplished during that given time. So now let's go ahead and look at some of the course settings, access controls, grading, and so on.
So now that you've created the course that you want for your students, which again, if you go back to courses, you can assign to any of your sections. You can use that same course. Now we want to prepare for the first day of school. So when you create any courses, everything is available to your students. Right now, technically, my students could go in and take the final exam, even though they haven't taken the course. So it's important to lock down some of these assignments so that you don't have students skipping ahead, and you can help to monitor their progress and track that and really maintain a good class. So the way that you'll find those settings is up here in your course settings. The first setting we'll want to go to is access controls. So what access controls is you can see everything's available right now. You can set the access that you'd like for your students. So I know the final exam should not be available to them right now, so I can set that as locked. Now students can see that still on their homepage, but they won't be able to access it if they try and click it. You can do this on the module level, lesson level, or activity level. So let's say I know tomorrow in class, I want to give this quiz on programming with Carol, so I don't want any students accessing it right now. I could lock it, or I can schedule it and actually choose the specific time that I want it to be available for them. So now they will not be able to access it until tomorrow at 12 a.m. I can also set it to a specific time that my class is at. Let's say it's at 11. And now no one will be able to access it until that time. You can also set an end time if you know that you want them to be finished with it by the end of class and not allow them to access it after that. Or you can leave this blank, and starting at the time you set it, they'll have availability to access it. Now the next course setting we'll want to show you is the is assigned settings. So I mentioned that access controls is you're able to lock or make things available, and students will still see them, but they won't be able to access them. The difference with is assigned is if you completely unassign either a module, a lesson, or an activity, that will just be completely removed from your students' assignments page. So if I just hate this short stack exercise, or I hate this, your first Carol program, I can just say, I don't want that one. That's too confusing for the students. You can also just remove the final exam from their view for now and just put it back when you know that you're ready for them to see it. A lot of teachers also just decide to unassign a lot of what's in the course at the beginning so that the students are not too overwhelmed at the start of the course. The next setting, also in your course settings, is the grading settings. So the way that grading works on CodeHS, if you've used it before, you know that there's an auto grader, which makes life really easy on teachers. I know you have enough to do, probably don't have enough time to grade all of the student work, but it's a really great option is to have your assignments auto graded. And what that means is if your students pass all of the test cases in their code editor, they will automatically be awarded full credit, and that will finalize in the gradebook. Now you have the option to keep that for most of your assignments, or you can set any of your assignments to be teacher graded. What that will do is indicate to you that you need to go in and grade their work in order for them to get credit in the gradebook. So you can do this on the module level. If I know I want to grade programming with Carol, I can completely change this entire module to be teacher graded. And now I know I have to go in and grade those. You can do it on the lesson level or on the activity level. So for example, let's say you're really focused on commenting on your code. So you want your students to go in and add comments, but the auto grader isn't going to check for those comments. You can switch this over to teacher graded so that you know you have to go in and grade that for your students, and you can actually give them that feedback of leaving comments if that's something that you indicated they should do. A few other course settings you have are exactly what they sound like. So due date settings. You can go in and set due dates on the module, lesson, or activity level. And if students submit any assignments late, that will indicate in the gradebook, you'll see a little red flag if that happens. Students will also see on their homepage that they have something due or something past due. Block text settings, you can set whether or not you want your students to be able to use blocks. And copy paste prevention, if you want to allow your students to be able to copy and paste into their code editor, and shuffle quiz settings if you want to shuffle around different class, if they're in the classroom, if you want each student to have a different ordering of their quizzes. Now, all of this can be done at the section level or the course level, and it can also be done on a student level. So this becomes really helpful with differentiation in your classroom. You can't really assume that all students are going to be at the same pace, that all students will be at the same level. So what you'll want to do is, if you need to, set individual settings for your students. So how I got here is I was in course settings and I went to the roster page. Next to each student, you can see their progress. And then there's also this little gear button that says student settings. So I'm noticing that Isabella and a couple other students are falling a little bit behind, and I think it might be because they just aren't understanding the coursework as much as some of my other students. So I can go into their individual course settings, and something Lucas showed you before is that you can add some supplemental materials. So some of those were practice questions, extra Carol puzzles, things like that. So I could always go in here and change the availability of some of this. So I can go in the module level, lesson level, or activity level. And it looks like your first Carol program, I set that to not be assigned, but I know that this student could use some help and could use this practice. So I'm going to set that to be assigned. I could also change the due date. Let's say I know she's been out for a while. I might want to change that for her and choose whether or not that's available. So all of the settings that you can set for your whole class, you can also set on a per student level. And I'll pause. I know that was a lot of information. So do we have any questions that we want to answer at this point?
Gary, Mark, is there anything in the chat or Q&A that's worth discussing?
Hey, Sarah, could you maybe go back and show how you got to the availability settings?
Is assigned settings, or sorry, access controls?
Access controls, exactly. Can you
Yes.
sort of show that navigation again?
Great, thank you. So all of these are found in your course settings. These are all the settings you'll want to set beforehand so you can manage whether or not your students have access. So access controls is right here, the first option. And you can change these. Right now, it's set just for my demo section. But if I wanted it to be for all of my sections that are in this one course, I can do that as well. I can now set anything I want to be available or locked or scheduled.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there any questions at this point, guys?
Yeah, and if you have any questions about anything at all, feel free to type it into the Q&A and we'll get to it, even if it's not about what we're chatting about.
Absolutely. So we were under the course settings. We were looking at access controls, due dates, grading settings, is assigned. I previously showcased the assignment tab. That's where we edited our curriculum. And then the roster page is where you can see student progress, where you can reset their password when they inevitably forget that information, and is where Sarah found those individual student settings. We are now on the review tab. So we've decided what material is going to be CodeHS auto-graded versus what material is going to be teacher graded. We have found some material that we want to teacher grade, and you can see that here under student submissions. We also, on the review tab, have student help questions. You can see who submitted, from what activity they submitted it, the time of that, and then what their actual question was. So let's go ahead and let's open up Sophia's question, and that'll take us here. This is Sophia's code editor. So we can see her code, we can run her code. Yeah, certainly seems to do what it needs to do. We can take a look at the exercise. It's supposed to be stacks of 3 spaced out by 1 row. Looks like Sophia's code does that, so that's great, good for her. We can check out the CodeHS test cases, the things that a student needs to do. Looks like she completed all of that. And then under more is where that conversation tab, where that question that Sophia asked is gonna be. So we have more conversation. And Sophia says, I don't get it, can you help? And you can say, looks like you did a great job, Sophia. Maybe try adding comments to better explain your code functionality. And I can send this back to Sophia. Sophia is gonna see that on her main student page, as well as when she comes back to this page. From this page, I also have the option to grade Sophia's work. We can see we're under the grade tab here. It looks like we haven't assigned a grade to this point. I'm gonna give Sophia a 5 out of 6 and say, remember, all code needs comments. I can then give a 0, award full credit, mark as finalized. So I could give Sophia a 5 out of 6 and you know, she is not gonna be expected to come back and complete this material. Or I can say that this needs work. So I'm actually gonna give Sophia another chance to answer this. I'm gonna say this needs work. Great, so that was one of our help questions. So I've answered this. If we refresh the page, we'll see that that goes away. Let's now look at our grading options. So again, under course settings at the top of the page, under grading settings, we decided what material was going to be graded by the CodeHS AutoGrader and what material was going to be teacher graded. Only that teacher graded material is going to end up here in the student submissions section. So grade mode is what we just looked at. Grade mode is going to pull up each student's individual activity, and we can grade from here. It allows us to run the student code, verify the exercise, take a look at test cases, things like that. However, one of our options is fast grade. This is a pro functionality, and let me say it is sweet. So the fast grade functionality is going to take you to a page that looks like this. On the right-hand side, we see the CodeHS recommended solution code. In the middle, we see the student code, what they've submitted to be graded. And on the left-hand side, we have the option to actually grade that material. So we can see who submitted it, what activity this is, what section they're in, when it was submitted. You can see the time they spent on this, 1 minute and 11 seconds, and any current grade. So if Sophia's work comes up, we'll see that her current grade is a 5 out of 6. So this, you know, Lucas, unfortunately, doesn't look like you completed the activity entirely. So let's leave Lucas a note that says, can you try this again and make sure you follow the exercise directions? Typing under pressure, huh? You know, Lucas is close. I am going to give him a 3 out of 6, but I'm going to say that this needs work. So this is something that Lucas will know that he can continue to work on in the future. And then boom, our next activity shows up right here. Noah Stein, I know Noah's better than this. Looks like Noah may have, just not completed this activity or something of that sort. I'm gonna give Noah a 0 and we're gonna move forward. Dirk Swift, Dirk hasn't submitted anything. So that's gonna get a 0 at this point too. I think now this may be a demo section issue, but let's assume that James has the proper code. It's the proper, process. It completes the activity. It mirrors the CodeHS recommended solution code. I can type out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Heck, maybe he does a great job. He actually leaves comments like I've been telling everybody they need to all the time. And he's actually going to earn an 8 out of 6. I don't need to leave a comment if I don't want, but I really want James to know he did a wonderful job. So we're going to say great job and finalize that. James knows he doesn't need to work on that anymore. The 8 out of 6 will reflect in the grade book for both myself and for James. Charlotte, again, great job. We're just gonna say award full credit and move on. Noah, great job. We're just gonna award full credit. Ooh, we're now on a different activity here. So we can see now, this is just a flow of what has been submitted. So Mia submitted Make a Tower while some other students were submitting some additional work. We can see the CodeHS recommended solution code, Mia's code, and we have that option to grade here. So this is our fast grade functionality. It's under the review tab. Below help questions, we have fast grade. So do we have any questions about fast grade functionality? Mark, Gary, no questions about grading?
We had one question about late assignments. And is there a way to set it so they get a lower grade through the configure? So late assignments will be receive a 0 if they're if they're not turned in on time.
Got
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
And I'll actually address this as we go through the grade book. I think that would be the most helpful. So right after you grade your assignments, you'll want to go to the grade book, which is also found up here on the top of the page. Here you'll get just a bird's eye view of how your students are doing. You'll be able to see their progress, whether or not they're doing well. And the way that you can tell how they're doing is by looking at this key. There's a pretty fancy color key that we have to explain what all of this means. So the dark green color means that this student's grade has been finalized. Either it was finalized by the auto grader, or you as the teacher gave it a final grade and it went directly into the grade book. This light pink color means that it has been reviewed by you and you marked it as needs work. So now they're notified that they need to resubmit that for your approval, and maybe you can give it a final grade. Then this dark pink color means it has been submitted after you've reviewed it. And now you are notified that you need to go back in and change their grade. This light green color means that the assignment has been submitted and it's something that you set to be teacher graded. So now you need to go in and actually grade that. So right now I can see all of these are light green under short stack. So I would want to go in. I know that I need to grade all of this short stack and all of the Make a Tower activities. The yellow color means that a student has opened it, but it hasn't been submitted yet. And the gray color means that it is not opened yet. So if I know that I want to go into this short stack and grade it, I can just click directly on that assignment and it will bring me to this short stack page where if you like, maybe you don't have time to grade this specific assignment, you can just set it to auto and the auto grader will retroactively do the work. You can also get to fast grade right from here. You can change scores directly from in here, and you can also change the status of any of the assignments. Now back to the gradebook, there are a bunch of ways that you can configure this, and this is where I'll get to the question about the late assignments. So right now, it looks like all of my students have submitted all their assignments on time. I don't see any red flags, but if they had submitted it late, I would see it here with a little red flag on the corner, and you'll notice that in your gradebook. So one option that I have is in the configure settings under late assignments, there is the option that you can assign all late assignments to be finalized to 0. This can be done right away. You can set this up at the beginning of the class, or you could retroactively do that. So if you notice all these kids have been submitting things late, maybe you just want them to see that this is how it will affect their grade if they receive a 0, you can check that and it will turn all of those late assignments to 0. Otherwise, it will show up the same way that it would any other one. If it was set to be teacher graded, it will just be awaiting you to grade it. And if not, it might receive a full credit. So you need to just go in and change that if your policy is that they can't receive full credit if it's late. Some other ways that you can configure your gradebook, and feel free, if that was not an adequate answer, feel free to ask any follow-up questions and we can definitely address those. Right now, everything's included in my gradebook. So videos, quizzes, examples, badges are all included in the gradebook. Maybe I don't want the videos to be included because maybe we actually watch this as a class. We watch the videos as a class, so they won't turn up as finalized in the gradebook if you watch them together and the student isn't actually going through them. So that could be something I take out. And you can choose which you want to include and take out. Here's the option to show that late flag on the assignments. So if you don't have late assignments, maybe you don't need that, or if you don't really mind whether or not students submit them, you could uncheck that. You have student permissions, whether or not they can actually view their report. So the only reason I could really see you not wanting them to view their report is if you're using a separate system to report their grades. So if you're using that separate system, you might not want them to see this grade in case there are a little bit of differences there. Then we have the late assignments and grading calculations. This is a new feature that we can send some more information on, but if you want to have certain percentages in your gradebook on, let's say you want homework to be counted as a certain percent and extra credit as a certain percent, and then you can decide which activities actually go along with each of those settings. You can enable weighted grading and you can set that up for them. And you can also decide whether or not you want your points out of the total graded points or the total possible points. Then I can save that and that will update my gradebook accordingly. So it looks like this is something that just your first Cal program is not something that will be included in my gradebook. So now it says NA. Another option you have is to click this edit button. And we have chosen, based on the curriculum team's knowledge, how each assignment should be graded. So as you saw when Lucas was grading, certain assignments were out of 6, out of 4, and that kind of just helps with the weighting of your gradebook. But you can always change that if you want. So if you know that you want this more basic Carol quiz to count out of more points, you could change that. Let's say we want it out of 8. And then that will repopulate all of the grades that I have in here. By pressing edit, you also have the option to change any of these grades. So if you see that someone has submitted a late assignment, maybe received full credit, you can go in and change that right here. And you can also remove anything from the gradebook. So if you just decide that maybe you did something during class, like this exercise, Carol turns right, it looks like nobody's opened it, so maybe we did that as a class, I can just remove that from the gradebook and you won't see it and your students won't see it. Just make sure that you are certain you want to delete that when you do. And then we can press done. And now our gradebook has been configured. Do we have questions about this gradebook? I know some people use some external systems. If you want to export that, you can also do that here and import it into your personal gradebook.
Gary or Mark, are there questions in the chat or the Q&A about the gradebook functionality?
I think we're all clean, guys.
Great. We are moving right along. I am going to talk to you about the Progress tab. So just to review, under roster that's where you see your student enrollment. That's where you see individual student progress, where you can make those student settings changes. And again, change those passwords when they inevitably forget that. Under assignments is where you can edit that curriculum, where you can make changes to the curriculum flow. I'm currently on the review tab. That's where we went to do our grading. The gradebook, Sarah was just showing you our gradebook functionality. And then we took a look earlier at course settings where we talked about access controls and due dates and grading and block text and all the really cool things at your kind of fingertips with a CodeHS course. But we are going to go ahead and take a look at this progress tab. As you can see in the progress dropdown, there is progress that can be viewed per module. So that's going to say a student is 50% done with this module per lesson, where a student is just going to see or you are just going to see a finalized option. You know, maybe they're still working on a particular lesson, right? So a lesson is the video, the quiz, the example, and the number of exercises. Or we can look at progress per assignment. So that's going to be, did they complete the video? Yes or no. Did they complete the quiz? Yes or no. And we can see that same grading kind of color coding schema that Sarah touched on. Gray, meaning they haven't opened this activity yet. So we can see that Noah Johnson has not opened 1.2.2, the more basic Carol quiz. The yellow color is something that has been opened but has not been submitted. So it looks like 1.2 more basic Carol for Noah and Sophia is still being worked on. It looks like Mia is over here working on slide Carol. That light green color is something that the students are waiting on you to grade. So this is not something being CodeHS auto-graded. That's something that you as the teacher are going to grade. The pink, which we see a little bit of, is that's where you left those comments and said, hey, you need to keep working on this. So we can see Mia's got a couple of activities, and maybe when we're looking at the progress tab while students are quietly working, we can say, hey, Mia, remember, you need to go back and look again at 1.1.4, your first Carol program, or 1.2.5, Pyramid of Carol. You still have to submit those activities so that they can be graded. The dark red, which we don't seem to have any of here, is something that's been submitted after review. So when Mia submits this 1.1.4, your first Carol program, it's going to come back to you as that dark red color. That means it's been submitted more than once and is back in your grading queue. And everybody's favorite color, this dark green, is finalized. That's either been automatically CodeHS auto-graded, or you as the teacher have gone in and graded it, and you don't need to do anything further, and the student doesn't need to do anything further. So just like on the Gradebook tab, we can look at this per module or for all modules. And you can export this data and configure this data a little bit, whether you want to show quizzes or exercises or both, or kind of the whole flow as we've got here. Under the progress tab, there's some other great functionality as well. Quiz scores is really helpful. A lot of teachers use quizzes as one of their main grading mechanisms. And then time tracking. Let's go ahead and look at that. Yeah, this is exactly what it sounds like. This is tracking how long a student spent on a given activity. I think this is really nice to look for outliers, to look for students that have been stuck for a long period of time. Maybe Mia Smith has been stuck on something for like 20 minutes. And you just want to say, hey, Mia, it looks like you're stuck on 1.2.5, Pyramid of Carol. Let's take a look and see, you know, what issues you might be having. Or you can look and say, wow, it took Aiden 5 minutes to do the last 4 activities, but it only took him 51 seconds to do short stack. Maybe we'll go ahead and take a look at his code. You can pull that up, go over to more, and take a look at his history and see, oh, actually, yeah, I can see his thought process, you know. he had move, put ball, and he finished it with move, put ball, move. Okay. Or maybe you say, oh, that's a whole lot of code that he added all at once. Maybe you can limit copy paste in the course settings, or you can talk to Aiden about his thought process to better understand how a student completed something so quickly. So time tracking is a really good resource, just again, to understand averages of how long this work is taking your students, as well as maybe who could use additional help, and who's really flying. So great resources there under time tracking. And then let's take a look. Actually, do we have any questions?
Yeah, Lucas, Mitch is asking if we offer any training for sort of like how teachers would model teaching through one of our modules. So in other words, like how other teachers would use CodeHS in their classroom.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we, I believe, have already had 3 of these webinars, and I know we have more scheduled with our CodeHS certified educators. These are great resources, people that have been using CodeHS in the classroom for a number of years, and they lead webinars just kind of showcasing how they use CodeHS. I recently sat in on one with a Bay Area teacher, Sean Racer. He talked about all the different ways that he uses CodeHS both in person and how he's using it for distance learning. So that's a great resource. And again, we have additional teacher-led webinars coming up soon. You also have access to us, the customer success managers and the support team. And we can certainly discuss different tips, tricks, and potential processes. One additional resource that we're sending out is going to be a do's and don'ts list for getting started for the year and successfully using CodeHS Pro. That will get sent to you in the wrap-up email for this webinar. Anything else? Great.
Okay,
Thanks,
so
Mark and Gary.
as Lucas was saying, this is not the end of us. This is not the end of support on CodeHS. So if there was something we were missing, something you need help with, or you're in the moment, you're in class or preparing for your class and you still aren't sure what to do, we have this awesome toolbox at the top of your page that will have all of the resources that we've gone through, as well as this support section where you can contact us. So if I click here, or you might have noticed this little blue circle at the bottom of the page, you can always write into our support team. We have a very large support team who responds very quickly. You can see under 20 minutes typically, and it's a lot of times even less. You can send them a message, let them know what you need help with. A lot of times it's really helpful to take screenshots of your screen, as well as if you are on a specific activity or on a specific page, you can take that URL, copy that link, and paste it here. Let us know what's going on with the page, what you need help with, and we are happy to get back to you. Someone who might answer might be a member of the support team. It also could be one of us. It could be your specific customer success manager. And if you do have Pro, you likely do have one of us dedicated to answering those questions, and you can email us directly. Another great option is our knowledge base. So I go here all the time. If you just need help with something specific, let's say the Gradebook, you can type in Gradebook and you can find pretty much anything that you need to know there. There are a lot of ways that you can find help. We also know that this is a particularly stressful year for a lot of you, and we want to make that as easy as possible. It's going to be hard on you. It will also be hard on students. So we've tried to make some ways where we can help out with that. So one of the ways to do that is to increase engagement. A lot of questions that I get are about how can we keep kids engaged if we're inside the classroom or outside the classroom. One of the awesome ways to do that is from your roster page. You can actually award them badges. And this is something I love to do. I love to do with my students, and they get really excited just seeing, you know, maybe you have an MVP of coding class, maybe you have a coder of the week, or something like that, where students just get really excited to see that you're noticing what they're doing, especially if you're outside of the classroom. And I'll just mention some additional virtual resources that we've learned because some people have been asking. We now have an announcements tab where you can put announcements directly to your students in your course. You can also look at attendance, whether or not they've been there, and kind of just keep a track on them and see what they're doing. So we're really excited to work with you this year. We're also excited to see all the amazing things that you do, and know that you're not alone, know you have support, and know that we're here to help you.
Oh, and I'm muted. How fun. Yeah, so that's a majority of the resources that we're going to talk about. I will touch on a few more things, and then we'll stick around to answer additional questions. One question that I got was, where can I find those teacher certified webinars? In the knowledge base that Sarah talked about, if you type in the word webinar, our webinar, our past webinars, our future webinars, and those teacher certified webinars will pop up there as well. Again, those are wonderful resources. Somebody else asked about, you took your share from me there, Sarah. Thank you. Somebody else asked about CodeHS Create. That is available here on the left-hand side. You can see this Create tab. When you pull that open, you will see that you can create a new playlist, demo for JavaScript. We'll go ahead and create that. When we create a new playlist, I can then create a module, lesson, or activity. You can see here that we can add an activity, lesson 1. And then we can choose, do we want this to be an exercise, an example, a quiz, a challenge, just some notes section, a video. So you can embed Vimeo or YouTube videos here. You can choose what language. So do you want this to be a JavaScript program? Do you want this to be a SQL program, an HTML program? And then what type of file as well. So some great resources there. Again, that is under CodeHS Create on the left-hand side of many of your tabs. Sorry, I lost
And just to add on to that, our engineers have been working tirelessly to improve the Create tool and make it really as simple as possible for you. So shortly, we will have a new option where you can add those directly from your assignments page, and it'll make it a lot easier for you. So we'll update you when that comes out.
That'll definitely be something that we send emails and notifications about. Some additional resources. There are tons of resources on CodeHS. I can't stress that enough. Many of those resources are housed up here in the toolbox. So you can see that you can create a favorites list, which is really helpful. There's a variety of recent tabs. You can look at all the different progress things, but let's go ahead and take a look at the lesson plans here. This is my course that I created, and you can see each lesson plan. So let's go ahead and take a look at More Basic Carol. It shows you each activity that's going to be in that lesson, any solution references, right? So we know you're not always going to have the answers, so we give them to you. Problem guides are going to be those answers with a little bit more in-depth discussion, right? So common pitfalls, things that students might run into are going to be described in those problem guides. Any vocabulary that a student might need to know, this is great, for vocab quizzes to make sure that students can talk the talk as well as code the code. Textbook resources, everything that we create is based off of a textbook. You can see the video slides. Here's some additional discussion questions. So things that, especially in a virtual environment, that you might want to discuss with the class in an open setting before, during, or after students working in CodeHS, as well as some potential modifications. We know that not every classroom is going to be the same. We know that not every student is the same. So we provide some, certainly not all, of the possible modifications. And then any standards. We know many states have standards. As a company, we follow the CSTA standards, which is the Computer Science Teachers Association standards. And if there are state standards associated as well, we will note those here. So again, that's under Toolbox. And then lesson plans. You can also see, you can go directly to just the problem guides or just the handouts, the glossary for all that vocab. And if you view the full toolbox, we see even more resources. Searchable here, if we click View All Tools, which is very helpful. Maybe I just want to look at our data options. I can see student login history or the coding activity, active day history. So what are students completing on any given day? Lots and lots of resources under the toolbox there. So if there are no questions about the toolbox, I think we are almost done. Are there any questions about the toolbox, guys?
I have another question that's not on the toolbox
Let's hear
about
it.
teacher collaborators, specifically about the collaborating on the same playlist, but maybe you can address adding teacher collaborators.
Yeah, absolutely. So under courses, if you create a course, you can add teacher collaborators here under settings. That will give access to, let's say, you've created the perfect JavaScript course. You want all the teachers at your school to be using your JavaScript course. Under settings, you can go ahead and add teachers as collaborators on that course. That won't let them do things like change your due dates or decide whether you are allowing copy paste, things like that. That just gives them access to your course. The same thing goes for your CodeHS created course that will appear here. You can give teachers access to that. So that's how you could combine or collab to work on one CodeHS course. From a section, we know some teachers are doing A days and B days. Some teachers, you know, we were all student teachers at one point. Some teachers have student teachers. So from a section, under section settings in the upper right-hand corner, you can find the instructions to how to add another teacher to your section. And basically they visit codehs.com/join_class_teacher, and they use the join code. One thing to note is this join code is different from the student join code, because that's how people would join as a student, and we want people to be joining as a teacher.
And just one thing to add about that, with you are able to add other teachers to collaborate with your course, but that doesn't go for the create tool, where they're not able to add assignments to your specific playlist that you've created. But what they will be able to do is, if you add them as a collaborator on your course and you give them edit access, they can then add their own assignments if they would like to add their own assignments that they've created using Create.
Are there additional questions on the toolbox or CodeHS Create or collaboration?
One other thing I think is helpful to answer for everyone that someone asked is about whether or not you assign a specific exercise, or whether you just let students have access to everything. That really is on a teacher by teacher basis. I know teachers who plan it out to the brim, like they look at their syllabus and they say, okay, this is what I'm going to do this day. This is what I'm going to do this day. I'm going to lock it, schedule it, and things like that. And then they also will look at some kids, maybe they have IEPs, maybe they know that they're not doing as well in the class, and they might unassign some things or assign extra work that isn't as challenging and things like that. So it really is up to you and your classroom and what you decide to do. There just are probably certain activities, like a final exam, that everyone will want to lock so that students won't have access to it right away.